The sky above Prime burned orange and black. Stood at the observation window of the evacuation center, watching the clouds twist into unnatural shapes. Those weren't clouds anymore. They were ships. Living ships made of flesh and bone and something else, something that made her stomach turn when she looked at them too long. Administrator, we need to move the last group now. The voice behind her belonged to the military commander. His pale blue skin had gone almost white with stress. The people didn't handle stress well. They had evolved on peaceful worlds where food grew easily and predators didn't exist. War was something they read about in historical texts from other species, not something they lived through. Turned away from the window, how many are left? 1,200,000. His voice was flat. He had stopped showing emotion 3 days ago. We have transport capacity for 800,000, maybe 9 if we pack them in dangerously tight. The math was simple and horrible. Hundreds of thousands of people would be left behind when the swarm arrived. Had sent the requests for help 6 months ago. She had sent them to every member of the Galactic Council. 47 different civilizations, some of them with fleets so large they could darken a sun. Not one had answered. Not one had sent even a single ship. They're afraid, said quietly, reading her thoughts. The swarm has consumed 14 worlds in the past year. No one wants to be next. Closed her eyes. The swarm didn't just kill. It consumed. It broke down everything into base materials and used them to make more swarm ships, more swarm warriors, more of the terrible organic technology that spread across star systems like a disease. Worlds touched by the swarm became dead rocks, stripped of every molecule of life. Start loading the transports, she said. Prioritize children and those who can help rebuild. I'll stay with the remaining defenders. Administrator, you should. I'm staying, she met his eyes. Someone needs to coordinate the defense for as long as possible. Someone needs to be here when it ends. Nodded slowly. He was a military commander, but the military was designed to protect against asteroids and space debris, not against an enemy that wanted to eat you. His soldiers carried mining lasers modified into weapons. They wore environmental suits with thin armor plates welded on. They were doing their best, but their best wouldn't be enough. The building shook. Emergency lights flickered. Somewhere in the distance, an explosion echoed across the city. The swarm's advance forces had landed 3 hours ago. The main fleet would arrive by tomorrow morning. Walked to the communications center. Rows of screens showed the same desperate scene repeated across the planet. Families huddling in shelters. Soldiers firing at creatures that didn't care about pain or death. Empty streets that had been filled with life just months ago. She sat down at the main console and pulled up the long-range communication array. Every frequency was silent. The Galactic Council had stopped even acknowledging their messages 2 weeks ago. The nearby star systems had gone dark, their civilizations either destroyed or hiding. There was one option left, one frequency range that the Galactic Council had marked as forbidden. The quarantine zones, regions of space where worlds were too dangerous, where evolution had created monsters instead of civilized beings, places where the Council had placed warning beacons telling everyone to stay away. If civilizations had developed in those zones, they would be violent, aggressive, dangerous, everything the Council feared, but maybe that was exactly what they needed right now. She programmed the message carefully. It was simple, a distress call, coordinates, a description of what was happening. She didn't beg. The had begged the Council and it had done nothing. She just stated the facts and sent it into the darkness. "What are you doing?" had returned, his uniform scorched from helping fight fires in the southern district. "Sending a message to places we were told never to contact." The quarantine zones, its expression shifted to something like horror. The species there, if they even exist, they're supposed to be death, planet-born nightmares. Then maybe nightmares are what we need to fight the swarm. Press the transmit button. The message shot out in all directions, across dozens of frequencies, toward regions of space marked with danger symbols in every galactic database. The building shook again, harder this time, grabbed the desk to steady himself. The perimeter is collapsing. They're coming through the eastern defenses. We have maybe 6 hours before they reach this location. 6 hours. Looked at the screen showing the transport ships lifting off from the spaceport. They rose slowly, heavy with refugees, desperate to reach orbit before the swarm's bioships arrived in force. Some would make it, most wouldn't. "I'm going to the command post," said. "We'll hold as long as we can." Stood and walked to him. She took his hands. This was a gesture of deep respect and farewell. "You've done everything possible. You've saved so many." "Not enough." His voice cracked slightly. "Never enough." He left, returned to the window. The orange and black clouds were closer now. She could see individual shapes moving within them. The swarm ships looked like twisted versions of ocean creatures from myth, all teeth and tentacles and poolsing organic matter. They moved through the air like swimmers, graceful and horrible. The communication console beeped. For a moment, hope surged in his chest. Then she saw it was just an automatic status update. No response to her message. The quarantine zones were silent, just like everywhere else. She sat down and began recording a final log entry. Future would need to know what happened here, if any survived at all. "This is Administrator of Prime. Today is the last day of our colony. The swarm will be here by morning. We asked the galaxy for help. No one came. We are alone. If anyone finds this recording, please know that we tried to survive. We tried to be brave. The lights went out. Emergency power kicked in after a moment, bathing everything in red. Alarms screamed. The screens showed swarm creatures pouring through the breached defenses like water through a broken dam. Turned off the recording. She walked back to the window. The first of the swarm ships was descending directly toward the city, its massive form blotting out the stars. She placed her hand against the glass and whispered a prayer to gods that had probably stopped listening long ago. In the darkness between stars, her message continued traveling, racing across light years toward worlds wrapped in warning signs, toward places the civilized galaxy feared to go. Toward Earth. Captain was drinking coffee when the universe changed. It was terrible coffee, the kind that got made on long space voyages when the good supplies ran out and you were left with the emergency rations that tasted like burned plastic. But it was hot and it had caffeine, and on the exploration ship Indomitable, that was good enough. "Captain, you need to see this." The voice came from his communications officer, a young woman named who had the best ears in the fleet. She could pick up signals that other people's equipment missed entirely. Set down his coffee and walked to her station. The bridge of the Indomitable wasn't fancy. Earth had only been in space for real, proper deep space for about 15 years. Their ships were built tough and simple, designed by people who knew that space was trying to kill you every second of every day. "What am I looking at?" Pulled up a waveform on her screen. "I was scanning the restricted frequencies. I know we're not supposed to, but I got bored and—" "Right, sorry. I picked up this transmission. It's not from any council species. The language is completely unknown to our databases, but the AI translated it. Captain, someone is screaming for help." She played the message. Even translated into Korean by the ship's computer, the desperation was clear. A woman's voice, calm but strained, describing an attack by something called the Swarm, describing her people dying, asking anyone at all for help. Listen to the whole thing twice. Where did this come from? Prime. It's in the Confederation, about 3 weeks away at maximum FTL. Pulled up a star chart. They're not a council member species, but they have observer status. Small civilization, very peaceful. 7 species living together, 12 colony worlds. And this swarm. His expression darkened. I pulled up what information I could find. The swarm is. It's bad, sir. They're a hive mind species that consumes entire planets. Biological ships, organic weapons, and they convert everything they touch into more swarm. The galactic databases have them listed as a Class 5 extinction threat. Have they asked the Council for help? Yes, sir, 6 months ago. Multiple times. According to the logs I can access, the Council acknowledged the requests but took no action. Felt something cold settle in his stomach. They left them to die. It appears so, sir. He stood there for a long moment looking at the star chart. Prime was just a dot of light, impossibly far away. The people there were aliens. He had never met one. Earth had barely been accepted into the wider galaxy, and even that acceptance had been reluctant. The first contact with the Galactic Council had not gone well. The Council observers had come to Earth with sensors and measuring equipment. They had run their tests. Then they had sat down with Earth's representatives and very politely explained that Earth was classified as a Class 12. The gravity was twice what most species considered normal. The atmospheric pressure would crush visitors from low-gravity worlds. The oxygen content was so high it was considered a fire hazard. The planet was covered with apex predators, bacterial diseases that killed in hours, plants that were poisonous, and weather systems that could level cities. The fact that intelligent life had evolved on Earth was called statistically improbable. The fact that humans had survived long enough to develop technology was called remarkable. The request that Earth remain in its home system was called a safety precaution for everyone involved. In polite words, they had told humanity, "You're too dangerous. Stay away from the civilized galaxy." Had been angry then. Now, looking at this message from people the civilized galaxy had abandoned, he was angry again. But it was a different kind of anger, the cold, focused kind that made decisions. "Get me Admiral," he said. The call took a few minutes to connect. The Indomitable was at the edge of human-explored space and was back closer to Earth with the main fleet. When her face appeared on the screen, she looked tired. Running Earth's first deep space fleet was not an easy job. "Captain, what can I do for you?" "Admiral, we've intercepted a distress call." He forwarded her the message and waited while she listened to it. He watched her expression change from curiosity to concern to something harder. "They asked the Council for help," she asked when it finished. "Yes, ma'am, 6 months ago. The Council did nothing." Was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "The Council told us to stay in our own backyard. They were very clear about it." "Yes, ma'am. But someone is dying out there, and no one is helping them." "Yes, ma'am." Another pause, then smiled, and it was not a nice smile. It was the smile of someone who had made a decision that others wouldn't like but that she knew was right. "Send the coordinates to the fleet. I'm calling an emergency staff meeting. We're going to need first officer for navigation, engineer to prep the ships, and marine commander to organize the troops. How long to reach Prime at maximum speed?" 3 weeks, Admiral." "Then we don't have time to waste." She paused. "The Council isn't going to like this." "No, ma'am. We could start a diplomatic incident. We could make enemies. Earth is already not welcome in most of the galaxy." "I understand, Admiral." "Good." Smile grew slightly. "Because we're going anyway. Let the Council complain. We're not the kind of species that hears someone screaming and does nothing." The call ended, turned to his crew, was grinning. His navigator, a quiet man named, was already plotting the jump coordinates. His weapons officer was running diagnostics on the ship systems. "You heard the Admiral said. We're going to war, make the ship ready." 3 hours later, the Earth fleet gathered. 12 ships, not large by galactic standards but built with human stubbornness. They were made from Earth steel and Earth alloys, designed to handle pressures and stresses that would tear apart ships from gentler worlds. Admiral stood on the bridge of her flagship, the Defiance. Around her, her staff worked with quick efficiency, coordinated with the other ships, reported that all reactors were running at full capacity, confirmed that his Marines were ready, 1,500 men and women who had trained in Earth gravity and Earth conditions. Admiral said, "We're ready to jump, all ships reporting ready status." Looked at the showing the stars ahead. Somewhere out there, 3 weeks away, people were dying. The civilized galaxy had decided they weren't worth saving, that the risk was too high, that it was better to let them die than to fight. But Earth had never been civilized, not by galactic standards. Earth was of that created, and humans had learned one simple truth over millions of years of evolution. When something threatens your pack, you fight. "All ships," said into the fleet-wide channel. "This is Admiral. We're heading into a war zone to help people we've never met, fighting an enemy we've only read about. The galaxy thinks we're too dangerous to be part of their civilization. Let's show them what dangerous really means when it's on the right side." She nodded to jump. Space twisted. Reality bent. The fleet vanished from Earth space and began the long journey to Prime, racing against time and death, carrying humanity's answer to that desperate message. "We heard you, we're coming, hold on." The fleet dropped out of FTL expecting to find a graveyard. 3 weeks was a long time when an extinction-level threat was attacking your world. Stood on the bridge of the Indomitable, watching the sensors paint a picture of Prime, and felt his chest tighten. The planet was still there. More importantly, people were still fighting. "I'm reading energy signatures in the northern mountains," reported. "Weapons fire, defensive positions, and, Captain, there are life signs. Hundreds of thousands of them. They're still alive." Admiral's voice came through on the command channel. "All ships, battle formation. Prep your Marines for immediate deployment. Take the Indomitable and 2 escorts down to provide close air support. Everyone else, let's clear these swarm ships out of orbit." The swarm bioships were like nothing had seen before. They looked like deep-sea creatures pulled inside out, all teeth and tentacles and pooling organic matter. They moved through space with strange grace, and there were dozens of them clustered around the planet like flies on rotting meat. "Weapons free," ordered. "Show them what Earth brings to a fight." The human ships opened fire. That could punch through armor plating tore into the swarm vessels. Missiles designed to survive Earth's harsh atmospheric testing slammed into organic hulls. The swarm ships didn't explode like normal spacecraft. They ruptured, spilling biological matter into space, writhing like dying animals. The Indomitable dove toward the planet's atmosphere with 2 smaller corvettes flanking it. The entry was rough. Prime's atmosphere was thinner than Earth's, which actually made the descent easier, but the swarm had filled the sky with their ships. "Multiple contacts," his weapons officer reported calmly. "Engaging." The ship shook as the guns fired. Swarm fighters, if you could call them that, swarmed around them. They were biological craft the size of cars, flying with bat-like wings and firing acidic projectiles. "They're trying to eat our hull," said, almost amused. "The acid isn't getting through our armor." Of course it wasn't. Human ships were built to handle corrosive atmospheres and micrometeorite impacts. The armor was designed for us moon, where radiation and particle streams could tear apart weaker materials. They broke through the cloud layer. Below, could see the mountains had mentioned. Smoke rose from dozens of positions. Small figures moved between defensive fortifications, firing at larger shapes that pressed forward in waves. "There," pointed at his screen, "underground facility, big concentration of life signs. That's where they're making their stand. Take us down, clear us a landing zone." The ship descended with its guns blazing. The swarm creatures on the ground looked up and felt a savage satisfaction as they turned them into puddles of organic matter. They landed hard in a cleared area about half a kilometer from the defensive line. The boarding ramp dropped, and Marine Commander led his troops out at a run. Had seen some Marines train. He thought he knew what to expect, but seeing them in action was different. They moved across the rocky terrain like they were taking a morning jog, not running toward a battle in full combat armor. Their suits were built to handle twice Earth gravity, which meant on this lighter world they could move like athletes. All units advance to defensive positions and prepare to reinforce the locals. His voice was calm over the radio. Remember, we're here to help. Try not to scare our new friends too badly. Lieutenant led the first squad forward. He was a big man even for a human, and his combat armor made him look like a walking tank. His squad moved with him, weapons ready, scanning for threats. They reached the defensive line, just as a wave of swarm creatures hit it. The soldiers were small, delicate. Their environmental suits looked like they were made of silk and hope. They fired mining lasers that could cut rock but barely slowed the swarm's armored warriors. Watched from the ship's cameras as one soldier was grabbed by a swarm creature 3 times his size. Then was there. He grabbed the swarm creature with one armored hand, pulled it off the soldier and crushed its head with a single squeeze. The creature thrashed and died, dropped it and turned to the stunned. "We're here to help," his translator device said in the language. The soldier stared up at him, was easily twice his height and probably 5 times his weight. He must have looked like a monster. Then more swarm creatures attacked, and squad opened fire. Their weapons were kinetic, not energy-based. They fired projectiles at speeds that turned swarm warriors into clouds of torn flesh. The noise was incredible, a continuous thunder of gunfire that echoed off the mountains. "This is Administrator," a voice crackled over the emergency frequencies. "Unknown vessels, identify yourselves. Are you really here to help?" Took the communication. "Administrator, this is Captain of the Earth vessel Indomitable. We received your distress call. We're here to end this." There was a long silence. Then his voice came back, shaking slightly. "Earth, the quarantine world, That's us. You actually came. We heard you calling. We don't leave people behind." In the underground bunker, stared at the communication console like it might disappear if she looked away. Stood beside her, watching the live feed from the surface. The feed showed creatures from a nightmare fighting the swarm, but these nightmares were on their side. "What are they?" whispered, watching a human Marine take a direct hit from a swarm bioweapon and keep fighting after a few seconds of recovery. Said, "From a planet where everything tries to kill you. They evolved to survive in conditions that would kill most of us in minutes. She struggled for words. "They're predators, apex predators, but they're fighting for us." On the surface, Squad had linked up with a group of soldiers. The humans formed a defensive perimeter while a medic, a woman named, treated wounded. She worked quickly, her training adapting to alien biology with impressive speed. "You're going to be okay," told a wounded through her translator, her hands gentle despite the armor she wore. "I've got you." The looked up at her with wide eyes. "You're so strong. How can you be so strong and so gentle?" Smiled behind her helmet. "We had to learn both on our world. Being strong without being gentle just makes you a bully. Come on, let's get you to safety." More human ships landed, more Marines deployed. The defensive line that had been crumbling for weeks suddenly held firm. More than held. It began to push forward. Coordinated the counterattack from a forward position, calm and professional. He assigned human squads to protect units, creating mixed formations that used human durability and firepower to compensate for fragility. Admiral watched from orbit as her tactical officer marked swarm bioships for destruction. The human fleet worked methodically, cutting the swarm forces off from reinforcements. "Admiral, we're getting communications from other worlds," reported. "They're asking if we're real. They want to know if help is really coming." Felt something fierce in her chest. anger at a galaxy that would leave these people to die, determination to prove that Earth was better than that. "Tell them yes," she said. "Tell them Earth's fleet is here, and we're not leaving until every swarm ship is destroyed or running for deep space." On the surface, walked out of his ship to meet administrator and commander. They had come up from the bunker, escorted by squad. They were small and pale and looked exhausted beyond words. Looked up at. Even without his armor, he was tall and solid, built for a world with twice the gravity she was used to. His eyes faced forward like a predator's. Everything about him should have been terrifying. But when he extended his hand in the human gesture of greeting, his smile was warm. "Administrator," he said, "I'm glad we made it in time. You fought bravely. Now let us help carry the load." Took his hand carefully. His grip was gentle, controlled. She realized he was being careful not to hurt her. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you for coming." "Thank us when it's over," said. "We've still got a lot of fighting to do, but I promise you this, you won't face it alone anymore." The battle for Prime lasted 6 days. It felt like 6 lifetimes. For the humans, it was just another operation, executed with the same deadly efficiency they brought to everything. Watched from the command center as the humans transformed the defense into an offensive campaign. It was like watching a completely different kind of war. They had fought to survive, to hold on for one more hour, one more day. The humans fought to win. On the 3rd day, she watched Lieutenant Squad hold a mountain pass against a swarm wave that should have overwhelmed them. 3 humans against thousands of swarm warriors. They built using wrecked vehicles and rocks, then held it for 3 hours straight. "How are they still fighting?" asked, watching the feed in disbelief. "They've been in continuous combat for 16 hours, no rest, no relief." "Their world made them this way," said quietly. She had been reading the human database entries they had shared. Earth's history was a horror story. Ice ages, plagues, predators everywhere. Humans had evolved to be endurance hunters, chasing prey for days until it collapsed from exhaustion. 3 hours of combat was nothing to them. One of the Marines took a swarm bioprojectile to the chest. The acidic compound burned through the outer layer of her armor. She staggered, dropped to one knee, and thought she was done. Instead, the Marine, a woman named, ripped off the damaged armor plate, slapped an emergency seal over the wound, and got back to fighting. 5 minutes later, she was still there, still firing, still holding the line. "They don't stop," whispered. "Even when they should, they don't stop." But it wasn't mindless aggression. That was what surprised most. The humans fought smart. They adapted constantly. When the swarm tried to flank their positions, the humans already had countermeasures ready. When the swarm sent flying units, human anti-air systems filled the sky with fire. Engineer impressed everyone on the 4th day. She had been studying swarm biology from the samples they collected from dead creatures. The swarm was organic technology, which meant it was vulnerable to biological attack. In her lab aboard the Defiance, worked for 18 hours straight, modifying Earth bacteria. The result was a pathogen that attacked swarm organic matter like acid attacks metal. It spread through swarm formations, making their ships dissolve and their warriors weaken. "Is this ethical?" Admiral asked when presented it. "Is letting the swarm eat more civilizations ethical?" replied. "Admiral, this is what Earth does. We evolved fighting diseases. Our world is covered in bacteria and viruses that kill in hours. We learned to weaponize everything because everything on our planet tried to kill us first. Approved the weapon's use. Within hours, swarm formations began to collapse as the pathogen spread through their ranks. On the 5th day, Captain crashed his ship. It wasn't planned. The Indomitable took heavy damage from a swarm bioship that rammed it, trying to infect the vessel with swarm organisms. The ship's immune systems, designed to handle Earth's aggressive microbes, killed most of the infection, but the damage was done. The Indomitable was falling. aimed for a swarm hive cluster on the ground. If he was going down, he was taking enemies with him. The impact was spectacular. The ship plowed through the organic structure, crushing swarm warriors and destroying their breeding chambers. Crawled out of the wreckage with a pistol, a combat knife, and a concussion. His crew was scattered, some injured, some already fighting their way clear. Then he heard crying. Small voices, terrified, not human voices. Found them in a partially collapsed section of the hive. 2 children, probably taken when the swarm overran a settlement. They were huddled together, surrounded by dead swarm organisms that had been trying to process them for biomass. "Hey," said softly, kneeling down despite the pain in his ribs. "It's okay, I'm here to help." The children stared at him with wide eyes. He must have looked terrifying, covered in blood and burns, holding a gun in one hand. Set down the gun. He pulled off his helmet so they could see his face. "My name is, I'm going to get you out of here. Can you walk?" The older child, maybe 6 years old in terms, nodded slowly. The younger one, barely more than a toddler, just whimpered. "Okay, I'm going to carry you. It might be scary, but I promise you're safe with me." He picked up the younger child carefully, holding them against his chest with one arm. He took the older child's hand. Then he started walking through 3 kilometers of swarm-infested territory with nothing but a pistol and a knife, 2 alien children, and absolute determination not to let them die. The swarm came at them in waves, killed them with brutal efficiency, always keeping his body between the children and danger. When his gun ran empty, he used the knife. When a swarm warrior almost got past him, he crushed its skull with his bare hands. By the time rescue teams found him, he had 12 broken bones, burns over 30% of his body, and was still walking. The children were unharmed. Marine Commander's troops refused to leave any civilians behind. When a swarm wave breached their defensive line and threatened an evacuation convoy, Squad held the breach for 2 hours against overwhelming odds. They took casualties. 4 dead, 12 wounded, but the civilians all made it out. At the field hospital, watched human medics work alongside doctors. A medic named was treating a soldier who had lost his arm. He worked with focused intensity, stabilizing the wound, managing the pain. "You're going to be okay," said through his translator. "You'll heal, you'll adapt, trust me, I've seen worse." The soldier looked up at him. "You're people, you lose limbs and keep fighting." "Sometimes," admitted. "We're built tough, but that doesn't mean we don't feel pain. It doesn't mean we don't grieve our losses. We've learned that giving up means dying, so we don't give up." On the 6th day, the swarm retreated. For the first time in recorded history, they disengaged from an attack and fled into deep space. The fleet pursued them, harrying them away from space. Admiral stood on the bridge of the Defiance, watching the swarm bioships vanish into FTL. Her tactical officer looked exhausted but triumphant. "Should we pursue further?" asked. "No," decided. "We've driven them off. That's enough for now. Let's secure the planet and help with recovery." That's when the communication came from the Galactic Council. A priority transmission, marked urgent. "Human fleet, this is the Galactic Council Security Division. You are in violation of quarantine protocols. Cease all hostile actions immediately and withdraw to your designated space." Looked at the message for a long moment. Then she opened a response channel. "Galactic Council, this is Admiral of the Terran Defense Fleet. We received a distress call from a civilization under attack. We responded. The threat has been neutralized. We will withdraw when humanitarian operations are complete, not before." "Admiral, you don't have authorization." "With respect," his voice was cold, "we didn't ask for authorization. We heard people screaming for help and no one answered, so we answered. If that violates your protocols, I suggest you update your protocols." She cut the transmission. On Prime, the fighting was over. Human and troops stood together among the ruins, exhausted but alive, stood beside, both of them staring at the sunrise breaking over the mountains. "Your people are terrifying," said quietly. Nodded. "Yeah, Earth made us hard, but it also taught us that survival means more than just staying alive. It means protecting your pack. You're our pack now." Looked up at the human, this warrior from a nightmare world who had fought for days without rest to protect people he had never met before. "Thank you," said. "Thank you for being the kind of monsters the galaxy needed." Smiled tiredly. "We prefer the term, sounds cooler." Admiral didn't stop at Prime. Reports came in of 2 more worlds under swarm attack. The fleet split, sending ships to both locations. The pattern repeated. Human forces arriving like thunder, the swarm retreating in the face of fury, and civilizations saved from extinction. Accompanied the fleet as a liaison. She had asked to come and had agreed. Someone needed to help the humans understand culture, and someone needed to witness what was happening so they would believe it. Aboard the Defiance, learned what life on a meant. The ship's gravity was set to Earth standard, which was crushing for her. She had to wear a support exoskeleton just to walk without her bones breaking. The air pressure made her dizzy. The oxygen levels would have been toxic if she breathed them directly. And the humans lived in this every day. They had evolved in it. To them, it was normal. "How do you survive on such a harsh world?" she asked Engineer one day while watching her work on repairs. Looked up from her tools. "We don't think of it as harsh. It's just home. Every world has its challenges. Earth's challenges just happen to be more aggressive than most. Everything on your planet tries to kill you. Predators, diseases, weather, even the plants." "Yeah," agreed cheerfully. "But that taught us to be stubborn. If you give up on Earth, you die. So we learn not to give up, ever." At Station, the second world they liberated, worked alongside Marine Commander to coordinate the defense. The commander had adapted quickly to human tactics, learning to use their strengths to support human forces and vice versa. "Your people fight like you have nothing to lose," observed during a planning session. Considered this. "No, we fight like we have everything to protect. There's a difference. On Earth, we have a saying, the only thing necessary for evil to triumph is for good people to do nothing. We refuse to be the people who do nothing. Even when it costs you," gestured to the casualty reports. 17 humans dead across 3 battles. For the amount of fighting they'd done, the number was incredibly low by galactic standards, but each loss was mourned. "Especially then," said quietly, "every person we lose is remembered, honored. But if we stopped fighting every time someone died, evil would win. We fight because it's right, not because it's safe." News of Earth's actions spread across the galaxy like wildfire. The quarantined had ignored council orders. They had entered a war zone uninvited. They had fought a threat the galaxy feared and won. Some species were grateful, others were terrified, a few were ashamed. The Galactic Council convened an emergency session. Representatives from 40 species gathered to discuss what to do about Earth. The debate was heated. They violated quarantine. They saved an entire civilization. They're dangerous, unpredictable. They're the only ones who helped when help was needed. Finally, the council summoned Admiral to answer for Earth's actions. She came alone, refusing an escort, walking into the council chambers with the same calm confidence she brought to battle. The council speaker, a being from a low-gravity water world, addressed her with obvious discomfort. "Admiral, you have violated our quarantine protocols. You have entered restricted space. You have engaged in military action without authorization. What do you have to say?" Looked around the chamber at the assembled representatives. Some met her eyes, most looked away. "I received a distress call," she said simply, "from people begging for help, people who had asked this council for assistance 6 months ago and received nothing. The swarm is a Class 5 extinction threat," one representative protested. Engaging them was considered too dangerous. Too dangerous for you, replied, not for us. You're from a your. We're what? His voice cut through the chamber like a blade. Violent, aggressive, dangerous. Yes, we're all of those things. Earth made us that way because anything less would have died, but we're also loyal, protective, and we don't abandon people who need help just because it's difficult or risky. She stepped forward, and several representatives actually moved back. You heard the calling for help, all of you. For 6 months you heard them begging, and you did nothing. You let fear paralyze you. You let bureaucracy and protocols become more important than lives. You decided it was better to let an entire civilization die than to take a risk. The chamber was silent. Earth doesn't need your permission to help people. We didn't ask to be quarantined. We didn't ask to be treated like monsters. But if being monsters means we actually show up when someone is dying, then fine. We'll be your monsters. Admiral, the council speaker said carefully, the galaxy has rules, procedures. We cannot simply. Then change them, interrupted. Because your rules failed your procedures meant nothing to people watching their children die. The civilized galaxy left them to be eaten alive. The dangerous saved them. She paused, letting that sink in. Earth is offering you a choice. You can keep treating us like we're too dangerous to be part of your civilization. You can maintain your quarantine and your protocols. Or you can accept that maybe, just maybe, the galaxy needs people who are willing to fight for what's right instead of just talking about it. The debate lasted for 3 days. Species argued. Factions formed and dissolved. In the end, it was the representative herself who made the final argument. The Galactic Council represents 47 civilizations, she said, standing before beings from worlds across the stars. 47 civilizations heard our plea. 47 did nothing. One species, one civilization you had told to stay away, came to save us. They didn't ask for payment. They didn't ask for territory. They came because it was right. She looked around the chamber. My people are alive because Earth refused to follow your protocols, because humans' value lives over rules. If the Council cannot see the value in that, then perhaps the Council needs to examine what it stands for. The vote was close, but it passed. Earth would be granted provisional membership in the Galactic Council with one condition. Human military forces would serve as the rapid response force for humanitarian crises across the galaxy. Accepted with a single modification. Any species that needed help would get it, regardless of risk, regardless of politics. No more abandoned civilizations. No more ignored pleas. The Council agreed. 3 months later, stood in a hospital on Prime, holding a newborn child. The first child born after the liberation. The child's parents looked up at her expectantly. "What will you name her?" asked. The mother smiled. "We will name her after the who refused to let us die alone." Felt tears on her cheeks. She looked out the window at the city being rebuilt. Human construction crews worked alongside, sharing techniques and technology. In the sky, human patrol ships kept watch, making sure the swarm never returned. Her communicator chimed. Admiral's face appeared on the screen. "Administrator, we've received another distress call. Small colony world in the outer rim. Pirates attacking. Council response time is estimated at 2 weeks. And your response time?" Smiled. "We can be there in 4 days. Want to come along? You've been good at helping us not accidentally scare people we're trying to save." Looked down at the child in her arms, at the promise of a future that almost didn't exist. "Yes," she said. "Yes, I'll come. Someone needs to witness it when they save another civilization. Someone needs to tell the story." "Good," said, "because this is what we do now. The galaxy screams for help and Earth answers every time, no matter what." The fleet jumped 3 hours later, racing toward another crisis, carrying humanity's message to the stars. "You are not alone. Help is coming. Hold on." The galaxy had learned to fear and the monsters they created. Now it was learning something new. Those monsters could be the best friends you ever had, as long as you needed help and they could hear you calling. Humanity had found its place among the stars, not as conquerors, not as traders or diplomats or scientists, though they were all those things too, but as protectors, as the ones who showed up, as the people who heard you screaming in the dark and came running, no matter the cost. They called them saviors. The council called them the Rapid Response Force. Other species had other names. But humans called themselves what they had always been, people who refused to let others suffer alone. People from that taught them to be tough, but also taught them that survival meant protecting your pack. And the galaxy, whether it wanted to admit it or not, was their pack now. The age of Earth had begun, and the universe would never be the same.